Every once in a while, you run into somebody who is so stupid, who is so hypocritical that you tend to laugh at them. Sometimes it gets annoying, and sometimes it can be frustrating. But for the most part, you just have a chuckle at their ignorance and their hypocrisy. Most of what they say is anecdotal. They like to embellish. They like to exaggerate. They like to neglect important information and only direct their attacks, their aspersions, on the opposing party. So I'm going to dissect the douchebag Lawrence O'Donnell, the smug, condescending piece of, you know what, that was on MSNBC late at night. And we're going to go over the hypocrisy of Lawrence O'Donnell and the left. So let's begin.
Sir, you're the recently confirmed Attorney General of the United States, and you are suddenly suspected of perjury.
That reminds me of who again? Eric Holder, Fast and Furious. Remember he used the DOJ to spy on James Rosen and other reporters?
In your confirmation hearing. And you absolutely did not perjure yourself. What do?
Nothing. You didn't perjure yourself.
Immediately offer to testify to the Senate Judiciary Committee that voted to confirm you and answer any and all questions about everything you said in your confirmation hearing to prove that you absolutely did not commit perjury in your confirmation hearing?
No, you don't, because our laws is you're innocent till proven guilty. It's not the person being accused of something to prove their innocence. It's people like you. If you believe someone is guilty of something, it is up to you to prove it. He doesn't have to prove anything. He already proved himself. He did not perjure himself. If you believe he perjured himself, then you need to get the investigation going. You need to decide, and you need to take him to trial. You need to investigate him. He doesn't have to do anything.
And this is important to you as Attorney General of the United States because you are going to be overseeing countless perjury prosecutions brought by federal prosecutors in your Justice Department virtually every day. Some of those perjury prosecutions will need your guidance. Most of them won't. But when federal prosecutors consult you on perjury prosecutions, you don't want any of them in that room to be wondering if you yourself are guilty of perjury, as they all now have a right to do.
That is completely false, because those people that are working for him do not believe that. It is only leftists who want to make, what's that term? Puddles? Lakes out of rainbows? Some shit like that? I don't know. It's only for leftists who want to make a big deal out of something that is not a big deal. So, no. If he is doing perjury charges, none of his underlings, none of those who are advocating on behalf of him or Donald Trump or the U.S. are going to wonder about his integrity, and they're not going to question his decisions as Attorney General.
Including the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., who has jurisdictional authority to prosecute you, the
I wish it would have prosecuted Eric Holder. If only. If only.
Attorney General for perjury. But Jeff Sessions didn't do that today. He didn't volunteer to testify to the Judiciary Committee to clear his name of...
Again, I really don't want to be repetitive this whole little episode here, but I just have to say, it's not his job. He doesn't have to he doesn't have to volunteer anything at all. He did not perjure himself. You believe he did, but that's up to you then to prove so. He doesn't have to volunteer anything, and no, he shouldn't. Why should he waste his time and taxpayers' time doing what you want him to do instead of doing his job as a new Attorney General of the United States?
The suspicion of perjury. What would you do if you were the Attorney General of the United States and you were suspected of perjury in your recent confirmation hearing and you knew that what you said under oath does fit the legal definition of perjury? What would you do?
That is a hypothetical that we cannot answer because that is not what happened in this case. So if that was indeed the case, I would first question, who is questioning my integrity? Who is it that says I perjured myself under the legal definition of perjury? And if it is someone on the left or someone who is a mortal enemy of me who wants to take me down and take down the presidency, then I would question their motives. I would question their ultimate motives, and I would wonder, well, let's look at the definition. Did I really break the law, or are they just trying to delegitimize my boss?
What would you do when almost half of the members of the Judiciary Committee sent a letter to the chairman demanding that you be called back to testify to the Judiciary Committee?
Let's see, you got Richard Blumenthal, Democrat. Al Franken, Democrat. Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat.
Doing nothing would not be an option. You'd have to do something. You'd have to offer to at least submit some so-called corrections to the record in writing to the Judiciary Committee. And if you were guilty of perjury, you wouldn't want to be in the open verbal crossfire of the Judiciary Committee again. But giving them something in writing, something that your friends on the committee could claim absolved you of any guilt, would be the least you could do. And that is what Jeff Sessions announced he would do today. The least he could do.
Remember, he doesn't have to do anything, Lawrence. I know you want him to, because I know if he does decide to testify again in front of the Judiciary Committee, that gives you and your organization more of a narrative to follow. That fuels the fire that the Trump administration are full of demagogues who are colluding with the Russians. So basically, you want him to give you more stories so you can try to maintain what's left of your poor ratings.
What if you were chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee and you had just voted to confirm an attorney general who is now suspected of perjury? What would you do? If you were sure he was not guilty and you wanted to prove that, you would summon him back to the committee to answer every member's questions until they ran out of questions. You would give him the forum to prove he was not guilty of perjury. Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley did not do that today. What would you do if you were chairman of the Judiciary Committee and you recently confirmed a friend of yours to be Attorney General, and now that Attorney General was suspected of committing perjury in his confirmation hearing? What would you do?
Well, we know what Obama did when Eric Holder was actually committed perjury. He didn't do anything. He let it slide. And I remember Lawrence O'Donnell, he was freaking out in 2013 when that happened. I remember that. No, actually I don't remember that, because he was completely silent, as were all of those leftists, all of the media. So now they want to attack, they want to denigrate Jeff Sessions' integrity. But the hypocrisy is that if it was anyone else on the left, if this happened 4 years ago during a confirmation of one of Obama's people, you would not hear a peep out of them. Just like you didn't hear a peep out of them when Hillary Clinton was being investigated by the FBI. Just like you didn't hear a peep out of them when WikiLeaks released information that showed the DNC was colluding against Bernie Sanders, essentially doing the same thing that the leftists claim Russia did to Hillary for Trump. You didn't hear anything about it. Just like you wouldn't hear anything if Jeff Sessions was a Democrat and Trump was a Democrat. You wouldn't hear any of this from this guy right here.
What would you do if you thought that your friend went dangerously close to the line of perjury, or went over that line and committed the crime of perjury, and you wanted to get him through this crisis unscathed? Then you would not invite your friend back into the open crossfire of the Judiciary Committee hearing. And if members in your committee demanded that you bring the Attorney General back for more questioning, you would protect your friend. You would refuse to do it. That's what Chuck Grassley did today. Chuck Grassley refused to recall to the committee an Attorney General suspected of perjuring himself in his confirmation hearing.
We could change it. Chuck Grassley refused to waste taxpayers' money on an event that was not against the law. I think that sounds more politically correct for Lawrence O'Donnell. I think the American people would rather have that happen.
If Chairman Grassley wanted to make Jeff Sessions look guilty of perjury today, he did everything he possibly could to fuel that suspicion by refusing his own committee members' demands that he bring Jeff Sessions back for more testimony. If Jeff Sessions wanted to add to the speculation that he is guilty of perjury, then he did everything right today. No. Jeff Sessions did nothing today to lessen the suspicions about the possibility.
Suspicions are irrelevant. Evidence is all that matters.
That there was something criminal in his testimony, in his Senate confirmation hearing, perjury. And the man who appointed Jeff Sessions and in effect delivered the Russian influence peddling scandal to Washington, in which Jeff Sessions is now implicated, behaved as he always does when not sluggishly reading a teleprompter in the chamber of the House of Representatives.
Now, normally you would think that he was talking about Obama here, because we know that Obama cannot speak unless he's reading a teleprompter. And we know that Obama appointed Hillary Clinton the Secretary of State, who in fact was responsible for selling 20% of the U.S. uranium to Russia. So everything he said there is completely correct, except he used the wrong pronoun. He said he instead of she. Because you would really assume right now, based on what he was saying, that he was talking about Obama and Hillary. But this is not the case. He's actually talking about Donald Trump.
He behaved like a clown. The President of the United States took to Twitter, where he once again demonstrated his cognitive difficulty in spelling in what may be his declining years. With the entire White House staff there to help him, it took him 3 full attempts to spell the word hereby correctly.
This is breaking news now. This is insane. I had no idea that Trump being able to spell a word correctly is such high, that it requires such high attention that it could be breaking news. This is familiar. This sounds like when CNN, New York Times, and I think there's one more, were left out of a gaggle recently that happened, and they interrupt their news stories saying, breaking news, CNN held out a meeting. Well, news organizations have been held out of meetings for years. Obama has done it numerous times. It is not breaking news. Again, he wants to denigrate Trump right now for spelling, and let's keep going.
Appeared in his imbecilic tweet where he now seems to be indicating that anyone meeting with any Russian at any time is scandalous.
No, he's not indicating that. He's indicating that people like Nancy Pelosi and McCaskill lied when they said that they didn't meet any of the Russians.
It is impossible for President Trump to get himself or his closest advisors in the Trump campaign and in the White House out of the quicksand of their own Russian entanglements, some of which may have been illegal during and after the presidential campaign. And so now he thinks he can drag any...
So he really wants to talk about what is illegal during a campaign. Does he really want to bring that up? Look at who the Democrats had for their candidate, Hillary Clinton. Look at Obama lying to the American people when he said that he had no idea Hillary was using a private email server. Then, later documents released by WikiLeaks and James Comey indicate that he did know about it before he said he did, and he in fact emailed her while she was using that private email account. Then, she lied to Congress. And then, she and Obama lied about Benghazi, and they used the families of the 4 dead Americans as political pawns to fuel their agenda so they could get elected the next time in office. They wanted the American people to think that it was a video that caused a cataclysm that destroyed the embassy and killed those 4 people. They used political pawns of grieving families, and now Lawrence wants to make it seem like the whole scandal going on here and the whole amount of maleficence going on deals strictly with Trump, that this has never happened before from a leftist person in office.
Democrat into that quicksand. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, anyone who's ever met with a Russian official or the Russian ambassador, even though it is well within their normal duties and responsibilities in the Congress to have such meetings.
That's really interesting he says that. I think that's also on the duties of someone who's in the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate. I wonder if we know anyone that's on there, that's in that committee.
What the tantrum tweeter in the White House is hoping for is...
I just remembered Jeff Sessions is in that committee. So I wonder why he would meet with an ambassador of Russia if he was in a committee that does so regularly, according to this guy.
That his followers, who have never shown any interest in fact or detail, will give the same answer about Trump world's entanglements in Russia that they have always given to me whenever I have the opportunity to point out Donald Trump's lies. They always say the same thing when you point out Donald Trump's lies to Donald Trump supporters. They always say, all politicians do it. They all lie. They don't defend Donald Trump. They know he's a liar. They just like where his lies are leading, whether it be about building a wall or tax cuts or banning Muslims from entering the United States.
Okay, those aren't lies here. First off, I agree. I think Congress needs to speed up. I don't care about the wall. The wall doesn't affect me at all. I don't give a shit if we build a wall or don't build a wall. I think we need tax cuts, but that relies just as much on Congress as it does Trump. As for the Muslim ban, it's not a Muslim ban. Because when you temporarily restrict people from entering the nation from 7 Muslim majority countries, but the other 42 countries are allowed in, that does not indicate a Muslim ban, because Muslims can still enter.
States. Donald Trump is now in the business of trying to convince at least those people that they all do it. All politicians do it. They all have the same kinds of meetings with Russians.
He doesn't really need to convince anyone, since the Democratic Party is down 1,000 elected office seats since 2010, including losing this year the House of Representatives, or not gaining ground in the House of Representatives, and losing the Senate, and losing the most governorships, and losing state legislators. So I don't think Trump has to really convince anyone, Lawrence, because your party is dying. And at the rate things are going, your party is going to branch off into separate entities. The Progressive Party, the Green Party, and the Centralist Democratic Party. So I know you're trying to just gain ratings, but you should really focus on saving your own party and not whether Donald Trump is trying to save his party.
It's meetings or discussions of any kind with Russians that may have in any way affected the last presidential election. That is the essence of the crippling scandal that the Trump administration sinks.
That's basically it. Now, Lawrence O'Donnell, I usually don't watch him because he just gets frustrating sometimes, I'll be honest. Usually, it's quite humorous watching him because you can just see the desperation in him. You can see he's trying so hard to get his point across, and he comes off as foolish. But there are times it gets frustrating, it's annoying, because you know he's just acting dumb on purpose, because nobody can seriously be this stupid and yet be able to have a job. So you know some of it's an act. I don't think all of it's an act, but no one can be as stupid as Lawrence O'Donnell. And I'm done.